Only Murders in the Building has just dropped episode 9 of season 5, and ever since reading the synopsis to this episode, this was the one that I've been looking forward to the most for the entirety of the season. The whole idea of an episode through the perspective of Lester the Robot felt like it had the creativity that makes OMITB the engaging and fun show that it's become known as, and whilst it didn't live up to my expectations, it did still certainly deliver in some aspects. This episode was full of clues, and we finally found out who the killer of Nicky Caccimelio was, along with finding out who took the finger from Charles's fridge. But the real question is, who's responsible for killing Lester? Well, let's dive into the video, discuss the episode, the clues, and theorize on who it could actually be. Here is Only Murders in the Building Season 5, Episode 9, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending explained. Now, this episode was all focused on the countdown to the move-out date following Camilla buying 51% of the apartments inside of the Arconia and successfully converting it into the casino that she was desperate to create. With Randall the doorman being spotted on the birdwatching video picking up the elevator crank that was believed to have killed Lester. Once confronted by the trio, he fled and made out like he was in Cuba, but in actual fact he was hiding in abandoned apartment 6C after fleeing the Arconia by the secret door which was used to move Nicky's body up to the dry cleaners. The group believed that Randall was the killer, but it turned out that due to Lester the Robot being kept in the back room and always recording, he recorded the aftermath of what Lester actually did once he returned to Randall after he'd confronted Nicky. Lester was covered in blood and he said that he'd been looking the other way for far too long. This meant that Lester actually killed Nicky Caccimelio because he no longer wanted crime to be taking place inside of the Arconia, the place that he cared so deeply about. Lester had been trapped working there and wasn't allowed to leave because Nicky refused to let Randall take over the involvement in the crime. All Lester wanted was to be able to retire in an apartment within the Arconia with his wife, but he was unable to do so because Nicky didn't let him. He was essentially trapped. So it seems that the only way Lester felt like he could get his freedom was to kill Nicky, and he did so with a piece of the Arconia, the old elevator crank that symbolically represented the Arconia that he used to love before it became modernized. Randall was found on the camera picking up the crank following Lester being killed because he knew that it was used as a murder weapon, so he put it in Nicky's office because he didn't want anybody thinking that Lester was a murderer. This then begs the question on who it was that ultimately went on to kill Lester. Well, during the closing moments of the episode, when the group were looking at the murder board, there was a scuff mark on the floor in Charles's apartment where the finger was taken way back at the start of the season, and at first it was presumed to be the wheels from Lester the Robot, but in actual fact it turned out to be scuff marks from a high-quality wheelchair. This was an answer that was solved by Howard because when he was caring for his mother, he recognized the scuff because her wheelchair always used to do that. So with Howard feeling alone and like he'd never truly found his people inside of the Arconia, him solving that provided him a sense of happiness and that feeling of belonging, something that he'd always wanted. The scuff mark turned out to be from Nonna Caccimelio, Nicky's mother, and some of Sophia's sons were also there alongside her helping to retrieve the finger. So this showed that the Caccimelios are far more involved than what they were initially made out to be. I originally thought that it was Sophia that could have been responsible for Nicky's death due to wanting to be rid of him because of her affair. However, with Nonna being present, it's now starting to make me wonder if she's actually head of the family and the crime organization and holds the most power. We know that she most likely wouldn't have killed Lester, but she could have been the person behind getting him killed, as, after all, Lester did kill her son, so it would have been revenge-driven. There's a strong motive there, so that could well be the case. She could have driven into him by the fountain, which then caused him to fall and then hit his head. In terms of whose finger it is, that's something that we still don't truly know. Everybody in the family has all of their fingers. The only person whose left hand we haven't seen is Camilla's, as she's always got gloves on. I did initially think that it was Randall's for the same reason, but after this episode, I don't think that anymore. I'm wondering if the Caccimelios being sent to get the finger is something that Camilla maybe got them to do. During the early parts of the season, it was said how the modern mob was the billionaires instead of the likes of the mafia. So I wonder if Camilla was wielding her power, showcasing it, and applied pressure to the Caccimelios because she didn't want to be seen inside of the Arconia following all of the crimes that had been going on. With her wanting to acquire the Arconia as well, she might have needed to have eliminated a problem which would have been Lester because he would have been in her way. So she could well be a suspect too for business reasons and also because of romance, as she was in love with Nicky. I am also starting to ponder on the fact that Lester might not have actually been murdered, and there's going to be a twist where in reality, maybe he could have had a heart attack or something like that, and that's why he ended up falling and hitting his head. It was said that there was no foul play in his death by the authorities, so it could end up leaning back into that. Personally, I don't think that will be the case, because that's not what the show ordinarily does, but you never know. They are 5 seasons deep now. My review of the episode. I thought this episode was pretty good. It's probably one of the better episodes of the season. I was really looking forward to it because I thought it was going to be solely through the perspective of Lester the robot, which I thought would have been creative, so I was a bit disappointed that it wasn't. Plus, I was also a bit disappointed that it didn't have recordings from the build-up to the killing and after the crime, because I feel like it would have been a good way of getting all of the clues across. If I'm being honest, I get why Lester the robot was included into the show because it served as a plot device, but it is just so unrealistic and not true to real life in the slightest, and I do feel like that's come at a cost to this season of the show. I understand the show is animated in nature, but that doesn't mean it needs to start including unrealistic things like a smart robot doorman. It's just a little bit too silly for me. When it came to the main characters, I thought all of their stories were pretty strong, and I actually quite liked how they handled Charles. They took away the buffoon-like nature that he's had throughout the entirety of this season, and they brought it back to how he was in the early parts of the season, where he was fearful of what he was going to do because he didn't know what was going to happen to him as he was on his own, especially when compared to the likes of Oliver and Mabel. Whilst it was a better handling of him, what I will say is that it showed how from a tonal perspective he's been all over the place this season and has been completely mishandled. This episode had the version of Charles that I liked. The rest of the season, he's almost been given the idiot treatment, which I think is a shame. In terms of the reveal of Lester being the killer of Nicky, I quite liked it because it was only moments before it was revealed to us where I realised that it could well have been him. I can't believe I never thought of the crank not being used as a weapon on Lester, but him instead using it. But that's where the show is quite good at putting things in plain sight and then showing importance later on down the line. One story that I thought was quite nicely handled in this episode was the one that was focused on Howard. Seeing him talking about feeling quite empty in life and like he'd never truly belonged whilst living in the Arconia, especially after his mother's death, was something that I thought hit quite hard. It was nice to see an emotional side to Howard when there's usually a wall and a guard that's put up. An arc that I am a little confused on is Mabel's. I don't see why the showrunners have felt the need to shoehorn in this will she, won't she with Jay Fluke, who she's not really had any connection with whatsoever. It just feels unnecessary, not really needed, and I'm not invested in it in the slightest. With only one episode to go, I am intrigued to see who the murderer of Lester is going to be. It's definitely been one of the weakest seasons of Only Murders in the Building in my eyes, and I think it's a shame because I feel like the seasons are usually a lot more creative than what this has been. Hopefully it's not a sign of what's to come, but I guess we'll just have to see how good the finale is next week. So, there you have it. Only Murders in the Building Season 5 Episode 9 Ending Explained. If you want to see episodes of Only Murders in the Building Season 5 being broken down, then check the playlist below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.